You see that shiny car speed past you and you're like, wow, that looks really good. That'd be cool to have. It's like, nope, this is what I'm doing. This is how we're doing it because it's going to benefit us in the long run. The culture and the character of like who we want to be as a basketball program went into every decision that I make. So I'm never going to veer from that. I signed up to be a college basketball coach, and me getting on the court and doing like that's what I love. I love every bit of it. I love trying to help guys get better, and helping them grow as individuals and people.
Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and I'm joined in studio not with our normal co-host, Coach Mia. She's out of town. We've got some special guests, but before you tune in, I really want to encourage you to make sure you hit that like button and subscription button if you've been listening to this show for a while. And remember, you can watch this on YouTube now at the 5-Star Life, and you can listen to this anywhere podcasts are streamed. We do have producer Arnold here. I don't know if he's mic'd up. He's back there somewhere. So I'm going to jump right in here. We have a special guest, two special guests. We have Notre Dame legend and NBA legend, LaPhonso Ellis, who is a friend and really a champion of 5-Star Life. LaPhonso, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Always my honor.
And LaPhonso, who is a champion for 5-Star Life, just told me, over the last couple of years, he's been involved with 5-Star. Just said, Seth, I'd like to bring some special guests on. And so his relationship with Coach Shrewsberry opened a door. So I'd like to warmly welcome the newest Notre Dame men's basketball coach, Micah Shrewsberry. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Seth. Happy I could be here with you and Fonz.
Absolutely. So, we're going to do this. It's going to be kind of fun. We're going to tag team some of the questions. We hope it's going to be fun. But, we work with kids, K through 12, and, we have a curriculum that's really focused on changing their mindset. So we talk a lot about, helping kids start to tap into their imagination. Kids don't know how to think today. And I have a question for you, Coach. First one is when did you realize that you wanted to be a college basketball coach? When did that begin for you?
When I was in high school, right? I came to the realization that my career was going to be over after college. Right? I was going to get an opportunity to continue to play in college, but I knew that it was over after that. So I really started focusing on coaching. And as I got into college and luckily I picked a great place in Hanover that's produced a lot of college coaches. That's when my mind was saying, I can still stay around the game of basketball, but I can do it in a different way. And that's kind of, when I was in college, that's when my mind switched to try to become a coach.
Micah, you've had the rare opportunity for guys to be an assistant coach in the NBA. Most college coaches are trying to run to the league, but you decided to buck the trend and decided to come back to college. Why did you decide to make that decision?
For me, it's more of my personality. And I loved every bit of the NBA, every bit of it. It was the greatest learning experience as a coach that I've ever had. But I talked about when I was in Hanover, I wanted to be a college coach. That was my goal, was to be a college coach. And, the NBA, I never dreamed of it. I never thought of it. It just so happened that, one of my best friends and a guy that I'd worked for a long time got that job, and it helped me. But my goal was always to go back. Just, it fits my personality. I am relational, right? I'm all about who you meet and who you have a chance to impact and how can you really change lives. And, you can help change lives in the NBA, but sometimes their lives have already been changed. But the kids in college, you can help them and you can shape them and you can mold them. And that's what, I enjoy doing as a coach.
Love it. My next question kind of shifts gears a little bit, but so many kids and even people look at Coach Micah Shrewsberry at the University of Notre Dame and think, man, I wish I could be like, how amazing would it be to be in that position, which is true. But most people have no idea what it's truly like. I think we fantasize about what these successful positions really are, but they don't know what it takes. Talk a little bit about what it's really like to be the coach at University of Notre Dame.
It is, it's, I get to pinch myself every day, right? I've been on the road. I've done a lot of spring. At the end of the spring is not as hectic, for us. It didn't used to be. It's still pretty hectic, but I get a chance to go around and do some different speaking engagements and other things. And every time I get announced as the head coach at Notre Dame, it's like, it's a pinch myself moment, right? For an Indiana kid to be recognized as that is something pretty special. But there is a lot that goes into it, right? Like, you're running a major organization, and every day is something new and something different, good and bad. And you just have to learn how to handle it. You got to learn how to adapt. You got to learn how to grow. You got to learn how to accept failure. You got to learn how to grow from failure. And you just got to keep your head down and keep marching on a daily basis because, I have a responsibility to Notre Dame and Notre Dame alumni and this university to represent it the right way. And there's challenges every single day in doing that. But the moment I put my head down and feel defeated, then everybody around me feels defeated as well. So, you got to stick with the plan. You got to have a plan. You got to stick with your plan. You got to be confident in your plan. And you just got to fight through those tough moments.
Micah, Seth spoke earlier about mindset. When you're the new coach coming into an established program, and obviously you had a lot of guys, you basically had to start over. And so you had to establish a new culture. Could you talk a little bit about the steps that you took to establish that culture and some of the challenges that came along the way?
Yeah, this is, it's so unique now in college basketball that, when you take a new job, very rarely is your job set up to be one of the best, right? Like I took a really good job here at Notre Dame, but it also nowadays with college basketball, like I don't have any team. I don't have a team. So, and that's everywhere. That's with every job that you take. So, obviously that comes with challenges that, learning a new school, learning what you want to do, like everything that goes into it is challenge. Hiring a staff is a challenge. But then building out your team and your roster is a challenge. So like you said, I said in the question before, like I had a plan for how we wanted to do this. And like the culture and the character of who we want to be as a basketball program went into every decision that I make. So I'm never going to veer from that. I'm never going to get away from our values. And that's going to help shape a lot of the decisions that I make. And I think, when there's so much, the shiny car drives past you and you're in your car and you're going 65 miles an hour and you're like, no, this is what I'm doing. And you see that shiny car speed past you and you're like, wow, that looks really good. That'd be cool to have. It's like, nope, this is what I'm doing. This is how we're doing it because it's going to benefit us in the long run than trying to jump around and do anything else. So the culture and the character, they shaped so many decisions. And, I'm never going to veer from that. Who we hire, who's around our program, the players that we bring in, nothing is more important than that to me.
So my mind goes back to some of my first earlier questions around this idea of people fantasizing about the different roles we see played out, and we wish we could be there. It sounds like, I think you used the word challenge about 12 times, which equates to the word hard. And people in today's society don't want to do hard things. And kids growing up, they struggle, like, I have to do something that's hard. I'm just curious, if you'd break down like a percentage of like the easy button and the hard buttons in your life, what percentage of your job is like just fun and just cake, and what part of it is hard?
Yeah. You know what? I love what I do, right? So every day is fun for me. But like the decisions that you have to make are not always fun, right? And that's where, like, you have to be a little bit empathetic of other people and how your decisions impact them. I think that's, like, I'm a head coach now, but I was an assistant coach for a really long time. I've been the director of basketball operations. I've been a GA. I've been a player. So I've been at every kind of position that you can be in at every level of college basketball. So I understand how, like, one decision impacts others. So being empathetic of that is something that I have to take, a huge, like, I have to think about that a lot. So, those decisions are hard. Like, that's not always my personality, right? Like, if I could be fun like 100% of the day, I'd love it. But it isn't what the job entails. So I'd say, 25% of it, 30% of it is that, right? Like, I signed up to be a college basketball coach, and me getting on the court and doing that, like, that's what I love. I love every bit of it. I love trying to help guys get better, and helping them grow as individuals and people. But I don't get to do that full time. So, I'd say 75-25, but sometimes trending, and it depends on when it is. Sometimes it trends a little bit higher, how much fun we can have.
Awesome. Good. Well said. We got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back after this.
Did you know that you can bring the values, lessons, and mindsets Coach Seth discusses on the 5-Star Life podcast to your local community? Schools are searching for programs and content that work. Just a simple introduction to your teacher or principal could be a game changer in your community. Inquire at 5starlife.org, and someone from our team will be in touch.
Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and I'm joined in studio with special guest LaPhonso Ellis and Coach Micah Shrewsberry. Welcome back, gentlemen. So we're having a great conversation, and I have really enjoyed watching you coach in the sidelines. And Coach Shrewsberry gets a full workout in on the sidelines. Like, he is working it.
Yes.
And it's been fun because I'm not a vocational coach, but I coach with 5-Star just voluntarily.
Yes.
And it's so fun to watch coaches who coach. Like
Yes.
pulling guys aside, like every second is coaching. And so I so appreciate that. One of the things that we're talking to our kids and coaching them in right now, Coach, is we're teaching a series on transformation. Like, how do you go from where you are to where you want to be? Like, if I could change my academics, my health, my basketball game, like, how does transformation take place? We know it's not overnight like everybody wants. I just wanted to ask you a couple questions down that vein. One, what would you say to someone who doesn't like where they're at in life? Two, what would you say to someone who doesn't like who they've become, but maybe start with the first one, someone who doesn't like where they're at in life? What advice as a coach would you have for them if they're a player or a kid or even an adult?
It's for me, and we've talked about how I really started wanting to be a coach when I was in college. And I had this crazy dream that I wanted to be a head coach by the age of 30. And I didn't know how difficult that would be, right? I didn't know how hard it would be. But on my 30th birthday, I got the job at IU South Bend.
Wow. I didn't know that.
That is crazy.
Yes.
The power of having a dream, having it clear, and even the clarity of having the age. I don't think it's coincidence.
Yeah. And I'd like to go off track a little bit. Like, there's this poem. I don't know the name of it. I can recite it word for word because it's, my dad has had it on the wall in my room. And it's really about believing in yourself and in your dreams is how it starts. And I could go through the whole thing, but I don't want to bore you guys with what it is. But it talks about that. And so I end up getting that job at 30, right? And I'd made it, right? And my goal, and I'd reached my goal. And I got there and I, really just rushed into the situation. Like, I had no idea what I was doing, right? And I failed miserably while I was there. And I had to go through that to really grow and get to where I am now, right? Like that was in 2005, right? And think about, like, in 2023, I was named the head coach at Notre Dame. We won 3 games my first year. We were 3-28. We improved to like 12-20 in that next year. And I ended up, because Brad Stevens got the job at Butler, I ended up going with him. But like, I had reached what I thought was my goal, but I didn't know, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to be the coaches that I played for. I was trying to be the coaches that I had worked for. I was doing all these things, but I wasn't being myself. Mm-hmm. And, I had to go through failure, right? Like, nobody's paying attention to IU South Bend basketball at the time, right? So it wasn't like I was on TV and doing this in front of a lot of people, but like, I was failing in what I was like training to do and in my job. And I had to take steps back, right? I went from being a head coach there to director of basketball operations at Butler, where I wasn't coaching no more. I was scheduling the buses, the practice plans. I was, ordering equipment. I was getting money for pregame meals. And like, I had to go backwards to do that. But that step backwards really helped me go forward, right? And that's something that timing there, I'll never forget, right? I'll show you guys this. Some people might not even know what it is, but like the humility of like me here now to never forget what I was doing then and what I'm doing now is I still keep this in my wallet. It's a Blockbuster car. Man, you were ordering movies for bus rides like 15 to 20 years ago. That's what you were doing. And, to go from there to here, it took steps backwards and then, to go forward. So, if you're at that point where like, I don't like what I'm doing or I'm not comfortable with what I'm doing, like, if you have the ability to change it, like, never be afraid to change it, right? I thought I had hit my mark of like where I should be, and I had to leave that. I had to leave it and go somewhere else and grow more to get to where I really needed to be. So, no matter what it is, no matter what stage it is, like, don't be afraid to take a step back if you feel like you're stuck or if you feel like you're not in the right place. It's okay. It's okay. And it is possible to change it.
Most often, and I heard you say failure, when any of us deal with a level of failure, one of the biggest things that come along is discouragement. How were you able to fight against discouragement during that time?
It's really hard because it's so, like I said, it is kind of public that, like, you take the steps and you're always constantly fighting, not sometimes outside, you're fighting yourself a lot. And that's where a lot of the discouragement comes from is yourself. Like, am I really made for this? Like, is this right for me? Like, can I succeed at this? I think that's what you have to fight, right? Constantly, like, it goes back to the poem that my dad used to always, believing in yourself, right? You have to have that belief in yourself, before you're doubting yourself, right? I went to the NBA and I wanted, I was there 6 years and I wanted to get back to college. And, I started interviewing for jobs that were open in college, from the NBA. I'm assistant coach with the Boston Celtics. Like, we have one of the best teams in the NBA. And I'd been in college. I'd been to a Final Four. I've coached in national championship games. I'm like, this will be easy, right? I'll be able to get a job from here. And just rejection after rejection after rejection. And, like, you start to doubt yourself of, like, man, maybe I'm not as ready as I thought I was. Or, like, what there's something wrong with me. Like, what is it that I think I see, but other people don't? So that constant learning, that constant growing, still keeping the belief that you are doing the right things, but also, like, trying to say, how can I change different things? How can I change the perception? What do I need to do to change people's minds? You got to keep trying to grow, while also still trying to believe that you are on the right path and doing the right things.
Really well said.
So good.
Wow. Good stuff. All right. That's a wrap on this segment. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. And by the way, we got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with more after this.
Five Star Life offers year-round programs for kids at our 350-acre training facility that we call Summit. These programs focus on 3 core components. First, each program includes lessons from our curriculum that targets kids' mindset. Secondly, each program teaches a skill like equine, archery, blacksmithing, basketball, fishing, boating, and many more. Thirdly, our programs connect kids to mentors we call coaches, who are trained to help kids live a 5-star life. Go to 5starlife.org to learn more or sign up your kids.
Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and I'm joined in studio with the one and only, the Notre Dame legend, NBA star, LaPhonso Ellis. Thanks so much for joining us and gracing us with your presence.
It's my absolute pleasure. You know how much I love you and 5-Star.
Well, likewise, and what a fun time with Micah. Thanks so much for inviting him to be a part of this.
My pleasure. As I think of 5-Star and what we're trying to accomplish with kids in terms of character building, et cetera, and values, I'm not sure there's a lot of guys that come to mind more quickly than does Coach Shrewsberry. I've had the privilege of getting to know him over the last year. I did not know him when he was named the head coach, and he's been so extending to me and my family, even during the hard time after my daughter passed away. He actually came to the funeral, and I didn't even know him. And,
wow.
That little nugget there speaks to who he is as a person. And, of course, the last 20, 25, 30 minutes we spent with him kind of allows you a glimpse into it more.
Yeah, character guy, humble, real, focused. And it's funny because sometimes humility, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, but like there was so much wisdom in what he's saying. Like there's so much depth to what he was talking about, dealing with failure, battling yourself. Like he just talked about the fact that he didn't know, like he kind of knew where he wanted to go, but he didn't know who he was.
That was big.
And that's a deep statement.
I think what happens, Seth, is in life, at least for me, I can speak for everyone, but you know, we're husbands, we're dads, we are engaged in that which God's given us to be engaged with. And in some ways we can kind of get on that Ferris wheel, so to speak, and we don't ever stop to kind of self-analyze. You know, who am I? Why am I thinking this way? Why do I approach things that way? Why? And he seems to be one of those unique individuals that has had the ability and continues to do so to stop it and to really self-reflect and to challenge himself if he feels he needs to grow a change or build on that which is good within him. And I just think that's a terrific quality to have.
Yeah, being able to jump off the hamster wheel.
That's the wheel.
And reflect. You're a deep thinker yourself.
I don't know about that.
Oh, yes, you are.
That's questionable.
Talk a little. You know, we teach kids about the power of critical thinking.
Yes,
it's one of these lost skills, something that people kind of talk about, but and even the educational system will say we're teaching kids to be critical thinkers, but they're really not.
Correct.
Where did you pick up on the importance of being a critical thinker and starting to analyze and assess and just the power of the mind? When did you latch onto that yourself?
It's been really through my wife and her family. My mother-in-law, God rest her soul, was an educator and grew up in the country, Long Island, New York. And is one of those, though she grew up in the country, she has a bit of a city swag. And some of that comes from the fact that my father-in-law was a Navy guy and they kind of lived all over the world. And so she had this great humility about her, this salt to the earth, grassroots kind of gal that was also a high intellectual person who was not only book smart, but street smart. And so a very, very wise woman. So just hanging around my in-laws, it challenges you to think bigger, you know, from not just from the end of your nose, but from a 35,000 foot scope perspective. And they had tremendous influence on me. And then all of a sudden the Lord blesses us with kids. And you're talking high intellectual, street smart, book smart kids that have that balance. It challenges you to grow as a person. And so I credit my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, my wife, and our kids for challenging me to grow because, you know, not everyone experiences this, but when you grow up in poverty, your mindset is to think about survival today. And even with all that God's added to my life since then, if I weren't careful, I would stay in that mode. I was still in survival mode. And here I am, 33 years of age? And even when we moved here 17 years ago, a little bit of that was still there. The Lord's helped me get through all of that, which has helped my thought process for why I do things, how I do things, how I want my relationship to be with my wife. That starts with what kind of man do I want to be? And that influences these days my kids and, of course, my grandchildren as well. So I credit my in-laws and my kids for challenging me to grow in that area.
And what you're talking about is so powerful because you're talking about you really went to work on yourself. And most people work their entire lives. I mean, like dogs.
Yeah.
But they never work on themselves. Sure. They never ask the question, like, where do I really want to go and who do I really want to be? So you around, your in-laws really helped cultivate some of that early on. But then you said your kids also helped you. Talk from a parent perspective a little bit. How did you parent to raise kids that could think? I mean, I think it's one of the missing pieces that parents maybe don't focus on enough because we're so busy. How did you and Jennifer cultivate that ability to help your kids learn how to think?
Again, being influenced by my in-laws and my wife, we wanted to read to our kids every night. That wasn't optional. Either Jennifer or I or both of us were reading to our kids. And, what we learned through some books that I read during that time we were raising our kids is that, things like classical music, reading to your kids really help develop that soft tissue for the ability to be able to think early. And we were very intentional about it. And God was merciful and allowed that to be able to bear fruit in their lives. And, I think of PJ with what he does right now as an SBA loan officer for a not-for-profit company. He has to be able to think globally in a lot of different ways, and to be able to problem solve. And a lot of that goes back to in the early parts of his life when he was being read to and played classical. Walter has that same ability, and Alexis, when she was here on earth, had that same ability. And so we're so grateful that God blessed. I'm so grateful as the leader and head of my household that the Lord gave me a great wife who was that way, great in-laws that were that way. And particularly my mother-in-law, having been a teacher, taught me the importance of reading to my kids and instruments when they were young and that kind of thing. And so I'm so grateful to my in-laws, my wife, and my kids, but they were definitely influential in that area, and we're so grateful to have received a lot of the fruit from that.
Okay, I got another question, but we're going to do this like rapid fire. Try to do this in like a minute to fit in this segment. Okay, no pressure.
I'll do my best.
Social media and the impact of social media on this current generation coming up. I would love your thoughts on what you see and any advice for parents.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it to begin with, because I think it fosters and kind of really kind of feeds our sin nature, which is one that is all absorbed on us and not others. And so obviously I don't have kids now. All of my kids are adults. But with my grandchild, I love what my son and my daughter-in-law are doing. They're keeping her away from visual media in general. And so they read to her, they watch her play, they play with her. And the only time she actually gets screen time is actually when they have to take a long drive. And so now my granddaughter thinks that's, can we go on a trip? Because that's a reward for going on trips. And so we do have to manage it, because it can negatively influence our kids and get them self-doubting and get them away from the values that we're trying to teach them, which is to serve others.
Well said.
How was that?
That was, 5 seconds left to wrap up the segment. Well done.
Let's go.
Hey, go to 5starlife.org to learn more, to get involved, to donate. We'll be right back after this.
Five Star Life offers year-round programs for kids at our 350-acre training facility that we call Summit. These programs focus on 3 core components. First, each program includes lessons from our curriculum that targets kids' mindset. Secondly, each program teaches a skill like equine, archery, blacksmithing, basketball, fishing, boating, and many more. Thirdly, our programs connect kids to mentors we call coaches, who are trained to help kids live a 5-star life. Go to 5starlife.org to learn more or sign up your kids.
Welcome back to the 5-Star Life Show. I'm your host, Coach Seth, and we're joined in studio with special guest LaPhonso Ellis. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Seth. I love being here.
Hey, so I want to kind of put you, I know you're a basketball player, you're an athlete, but I've gotten to know you, and it's like you're a father probably first, and a husband first. That's really what you emanate, what you are. That's where your focus is, which is so powerful. By the way, I love in the last segment you talked about how PJ and his wife are keeping their little daughter off of technology. And I just think it's brilliant. So my generation, me and my wife, our generation we're the guinea pigs, raising kids that technology is now thrown at you, and they were, we were told it was good for their brains and it was developmental and all this stuff. It's educational. And, you take all that for what it is, and you're like, okay. And we filtered some of that out. But now, like, there's studies coming out saying how toxic this stuff is and how screens are changing kids' brains.
Yes.
They have such a hard time processing and thinking because they just want to swipe right or scroll.
Yeah.
They want to be entertained. And so I was, for Mother's Day, we went to dinner, and we're eating with our family.
Nice.
And this is no judgment. Don't take this as judgment.
Sure, of course not.
But they've got 2 kids. One's probably 10. The other one's probably, 4. And they're both on screens. Mm-hmm. So you got the grandparents, you got the parents, and they're all on screens. Mm-hmm. I have a theory. There's going to be a study that comes out about this that's going to prove this right. This is just Coach Seth theory right now.
Gotcha.
But one of the reasons why today's kids, according to parents, teachers, so many others, struggle, and even dipping into the millennials a little bit, some of them have struggled socially,
yes,
or to do hard things, or to stick with things, just that resilience. They have missed out on so much learning, because when me and you were kids and we were at the grocery store with our moms, or at church, or anywhere in the community, we might have been bored standing there listening to them talk, but we were there listening to them talk. And we might have been in our own world,
yes,
but we were still gleaning. And we were watching how the responses were going back and forth. We're watching the body language. We're watching when people cringed. And we were learning, saying, I don't think I'm going to do it that way. Or, that was good. They laughed at that. Without even knowing it, thousands of repetitions, thousands of moments of just absorbing how to do life on planet Earth with other human beings. Now, today, little Johnny, little Susie, little Seth, little LaPhonso, stand there at the mall, at the grocery store, talk. Parents are talking, interacting, and little Johnny and little LaPhonso, they're doing this. So the reps they're missing out on how to interact,
yes,
and the power of relationships, and the joy and the warmth, or the rigidity, all of that is lost. They can't sense it because of technology.
Yes. And it's interesting, Seth, because we all know, even as adults, those awkward moments that we have, whether you're walking into a restaurant and it's not quite your turn yet, and there's a lot of people in there, especially because I'm tall, and people tend to look at you, right? And that uncomfortable feeling you get. Well, I can hide now, because I can pull out my phone and look at my phone and not have to deal with what's going on.
Shut the noise off.
We miss, to your point, we miss out on those great social developmental opportunities. And I call my wife Sugar. Her name's Jennifer. But Sugar and I have talked about that. I don't want to be, she's my best friend. I don't want to be out at dinner and both of us have our phones out. Phones are off in our pockets, with the exception of when Walter was in high school, we'd have one of them on the table just in case he would need us and that kind of thing. Because now all of a sudden, the beauty of marriage that God's created in terms of the intimacy that should be involved in it, and in terms of the relationship and the conversation back and forth, now I'm giving that energy to my phone. I don't want that for our relationship. And I think that's part of the reason why the Lord allows our relationship to flourish in that way, because we're willing to set down technology to deal with each other eyeball to eyeball, even when it's a difficult time.
Yeah, it's so powerful, because this is the default for, this is the challenge. This is why we're talking to parents. Limit their time on this stuff, because if their brain becomes programmed for this to be the default whenever there's downtime, going back to critical thinking, the reason why kids today struggle to think critically, and they just miss so many things. Like, what were you thinking? Well, they're not. They're either doing a task, they're doing a homework, or they're consuming some kind of content. There's not free space just to see the world, to have, independent thought, right? Yes. Creative thought,
yes.
Ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question as a parent for you. You've walked through parenting. You're now a grandparent. What would you say would be, with all you've learned, what are 1 or 2 pieces of advice you'd have for parents that are just starting out?
Yeah, Seth, that's a hard one, because I have to say, when you lose a child, you feel like you've lost the ability to be able to speak to those positive things, because you start to question your own child rearing. And so my with that as the backdrop and the foundation, my encouragement is to love them hard and be willing to set boundaries for your children. Encourage them in the things that they're interested in, because our tendency is, especially for me as an athlete and a former basketball player. I'd want Alexis, a PJ, a Walter, a LaPhonso for that matter, to play hoop like I did, but the Lord may have given them a desire for music or for art or for whatever that thing is. And I felt like the Lord gave us wisdom in some books that we read early on to encourage them in the things that they're interested in. And a lot of that pushback and fight that typically happens, especially with the boys early and then the girls late. We were able to mitigate a lot of that pushback because, they couldn't say, "Oh, Dad, I'm just playing hoop because you wanted me to play hoop."
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, you play hoop because you want to play hoop, and we're encouraging you in that thing. And beyond that, prayer. Keep your kids prayed up before the Lord, and trusting that the Lord will bring about positive fruit in your kids.
That's good. You touched on something with, you and Jennifer have been through a storm over the last year. And what would you say, what advice would you have for parents who have experienced loss or heartache?
For those who've placed their faith in Christ as the Lord and Savior, we have a hope. And so we grieve differently because we trust God that one day we'll get a chance to see that child again, and we know that that child is in good care. My encouragement would be to surround yourself with people who love you and can keep you encouraged, because if you are alone, especially like a single parent, it will be challenging because you're with yourself a lot, and the enemy has the ability to be able to drown us in our sorrow and our grief. Like my mother-in-law was my second best friend. She passed away in 2009. Seth, I didn't realize for about a 2-year period, I was living and taking care of what I needed to take care of, but some of the decisions that I was making were a bit uncharacteristic of me, particularly financially. And I realized over a 2-year period, I was like, wow, I didn't realize that some of those decisions that I was making were really decisions that are being led by my grief, and I was blinded by it and didn't even know it.
Wow.
Right. And the Lord used Jennifer, my wife, used sugar to get me out of it. And so if it's a challenge for an individual who has a spouse who's their best friend to deal with that type of loss, how much more difficult is it for a single parent, a single guardian, or a grandparent who's trying to raise a child or a grandchild? And so you got to be willing and be proactive about surrounding yourself with people who love you, who will encourage you through the process, and to be real. When you're not, it's okay to not be okay. You just lost a loved one. And so if you're crying your eyes out and are having that's okay and very normal.
Yeah. And it's also, whenever you go through something that's traumatic or breaks your heart, it's so hard to even know how you're taking it. Like, because it's hard to step out of yourself in that moment and see. And that's why I think it's great advice to seek out people. Like, get some other people that can start to help you see some perspective and just be there to support you. Man, this 40 minutes flew by. Thank you so much for joining me, and thanks for inviting Coach Shrewsberry to join. What a blast. This is awesome. We got to do it again.
Oh, my great pleasure. As I said earlier, Seth, you know how much I love you and love 5 Stars, so I wanted to be a part of it.
Awesome. All right, that's it. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.
At 5 Star Life, we are changing the face of culture through education and sports by changing the most important piece of a human being's life, their mindset. If you are interested in being a part of our journey, please visit 5starlife.org for more information on volunteer and donation opportunities.